I think the religious experiences that Jung is talking about on a personal level are unusual for most people. I think most people get them kind of secondhand through the stories and the parables and the whatnot, the readings in the church service and so forth. And so I think they sort of get their religious experience by proxy. Okay, and I think it's like a lot to expect for people to get beyond that. I don't think that most people can do that. And
Okay, so here's my question, John, because this is a fundamental issue within Aion here. And we get into chapter 5, which is about Christ as a symbol. Is it healthy? Okay, in other words, the Jung's position was that the church interposed itself between the people and God, so that you could not have an experience with God. And so, yes, I agree with you that there's a proxy aspect of it, where you're expecting the priest or the minister to have the interaction with God, and you don't have to have that direct interaction. But that's not Job's experience. I mean, that's not Paul's experience. That's not Jacob's experience. They had direct interactions, right?
right, but their texts are what are read in church, in the church service, and that's, you pick up that energy from that, and I can't say that you really understand it unless you've gone through one of these things. So it's like the platypus.
Everybody's making funny drawings.
Paul went through the experience, and you're thinking, well, that's really something. That was a powerful moment for him, but you don't think of it yourself because you haven't been through that.
It's not personal.
It's not personal to you, right?
Right.
And so Jung's methods can get you to that point. I'm not
Yes.
saying they can't. What I'm saying is that I think it takes a certain person to exert the courage it takes to go through these methods and to even be exposed to these methods and to understand them and to study them so that you know what he's talking about.
And
Right.
I think it's wrapped up with the ego, but I'm not sure if the definitions are the same, but that's one of the tenets of Christianity is when you can back your ego up. And I didn't have my own experiences until I had always told myself if I could back my ego out of things, I could get a lot further in life. It was my ego that got in the way. And when I learned to actually finally not have to be in control, it was my ego in the way. So I think there is a
Good point.
connection. I don't know, like I say, the definitions and all, but
Most of the energy, she's right, most of the energy, I think, of the average person is spent maintaining the ego. And the ego is tied into the collective ego, or whatever you call it, collective consciousness, and that's where it's stuck, is just maintaining this ego.
because it's the rational thing to do. You're supposed
Right.
to be in charge and making your decisions.
And,
Well,
and the rational universe is what exists, and everything else is a little wacky, and it's fun to hear about these stories, but
over here. I don't
It's over there.
but okay,
Right.
so
know,
using this image as sort of a example of this. Okay, we're up here in the ego, and your ego, whether you have a large ego or a small ego, as we've discussed, you can grow your ego. You can grow your ego based on the number of times you go through this Job Archetype cycle, right? The number of times you get defeated and grow from that. In fact, there's this funny comment from James Hillman that was on a tape I listened to one time, where he says, "Can't we find a defeat in here?" So
Find a defeat.
right, because because, and I didn't understand the point when I heard it the first time, but I remembered it. So in some sense, it was a numinous point. Can't we find a defeat in here someplace? But I finally understood it when I read Edinger, and he's talking about the Job archetype and the cycle, contest, defeat, lamentation, and rebirth. And every time you're reborn, your ego grows. Okay, and so you get bigger and bigger, but then
healthier, right?
if it grows, it's healthier. Yeah. So because you're better able to face the slings and arrows of life, right? But the ego floats. The ego's up here floating on the surface of the unconscious, and so the metaphor is the fisherman, right? Christ and his fishermen, right? Because they're pulling up things from the unconscious. Basically, this is the metaphor. The fish, if you think of the fish as you're pulling up something from the unconscious, and some of those things can be poisonous. I mean, I was having a conversation today, and we were talking about the puffer fish and the fact that it's poison, and yet I've eaten it, and in small doses it won't kill you, right? But you have to pull up things from your unconscious. But if you pull up something that's bigger than your boat, and your boat is your ego, then you better cut it loose because, like Captain Ahab, if you pull up a fish that's bigger than your boat, you're going to sink. Boy, the Pequod went to the bottom, didn't it? So the ego. So you have to build up your ego, and it's essential because that's where we live. And how do I go about this? I guess I have to stop. It's 10 to 10. So we didn't start Aion.
We didn't. We're on paragraph 63.
Well, I jumped ahead. Okay. I've been focusing on paragraph 63 for a month now because I think it really summarizes an essence about Jungian psychology, which is that we're not talking about the rational world at all.